Hello everyone and welcome back to Packs and Picks. Last weekend was the pre-release for Spark of Rebellion, and I'm here with the results of the second event that I participated in. If you want to see what I built for my first pre-release, be sure to go check out that video after you watch this one. But for now, I've got most of the deck laid out here, so let's dive right in. As you can see, I ended up with a green-yellow deck, and I started out with green Villainy, really on the back of two cards that I opened up in my pool, and that's two copies of Overwhelming Barrage. So this card's a lot like another card that I like a lot in the set, Strike True, in that not only are you buffing your creature in the case of Overwhelming Barrage, but you get to deal damage in kind of a one-sided combat. So you get to reach out, deal damage to another unit, and not take any in return. You also get to spread this out in the case of Overwhelming Barrage, maybe even get a 2-for-1, or God forbid you get a 3-for-1. So Overwhelming Barrage, a really great card, and that's what really pulled me into green Villainy specifically. I also had a Strike True in the pool, so when I started looking through the cards after opening my packs, I was kind of locked into Command at this point with these great removal events. So from knowing that I'm in green Villainy, I started looking at the other aspects, and I like the look of Cunning for a few reasons. One, Cunning also had some really great events, so No Good to Me Dead. This was a card I played against in my first pre-release, and when you pick the right target for this and lock it down for basically 2 whole turns, really powerful effect. And also the fact that the unit can't ready this round also gets around some of the effects in the game with on other cards where they might ready a unit with an effect on a card or another unit. So this keeps that unit locked down even through some of those effects, if I'm reading this correctly. So No Good to Me Dead was a really good card that I like the look of. We also had Surprise Strike, just a generic good combat event. Snapshot Reflexes, this is one of my highlighted commons for best commons in Cunning from my preview videos. And then Sneak Attack, this is another card I never really got a chance to use, I think, to its full effect, and we'll kind of see why here in a minute. But I do like Sneak Attack. It's just a way to really sneak in a big creature or just a high value creature at the right moment. Even though you have to defeat it, you could probably get some good value out of Sneak Attack. So lots of good Cunning events that I wanted in the deck. Also had a couple cards like Syndicate Lackeys with Ambush and Bounty Hunter Crew also with Ambush that I just felt this card specifically, Bounty Hunter Crew, would be good in this deck with all of these good value events that I've been playing. So I can play the Bounty Hunter Crew and get back one of these, maybe even an Overwhelming Barrage back into my hand later in the game. So I ended up with this yellow-green Tarkin deck. Some other things that I found out and what you might be able to see here is the curve of this deck is just a little bit too high, and this is something I struggled with through my few games that I played. You can see I've got a lot of like 5+ cost units here in the ground. We've got a 6 cost space unit. Overwhelming Barrage itself is 5 cost unit, so I often found myself really only being able to play 1 card a turn in the early and mid game, and that often just wasn't enough to keep up with my opponents. And this is extra problematic for a card I put in, Attack Pattern Delta. So this is going to be a 5 cost event in this deck as well because of those double command aspect icons. And also, this card really wants you to have 3 targets to really leverage it to its full ability. And often I struggle to get 3 good targets to stick on the board in order to cast this event for its full value. So that was a struggle in the deck. And looking back on it, I was probably better off including a card like Resupply in my deck instead of something like Attack Pattern Delta to help me get up into those higher cost units a little bit sooner and a little more reliably. So you live and you learn on that one. My low unit count too is also something that impacted me. So I've got 15 ground units and about 8 events, and it just seemed like I had too many events. I would definitely think maybe swap out 1 or 2 of those events for just a couple more units that I could put on the board and have an impact on the board. This also made it extra challenging to play Overwhelming Barrage because my opponents usually had a way of managing or removing my units before I could fire off the event. And really on that topic, Overwhelming Barrage, I still think it's a great card, but I think it either didn't perform as well as I thought it would, or I had too high of expectations of it to begin with. I was really looking for that 2-for-1 that rarely materialized. You play this on a medium-sized unit with 4 or 5 power already, you're getting 6 to 7 power to dish out. But my opponents often had 4 and 5 health units, so it was really hard to punch through 2 units with just 1 Overwhelming Barrage. So I do think a more reasonable expectation for this card is to like pick off a smaller unit, and then you've got that larger unit that can then swing in and deal enough damage to that maybe medium or larger size unit and trade in combat. And as the name might suggest, you play this on a unit with Overwhelm. That's really going to get you a ton of value. So I still think Overwhelming Barrage is good, but it wasn't as good as I hoped in this deck, mainly because of my high curve. So those are my thoughts there on Overwhelming Barrage. Some other cards that performed better than I expected. Swoop Racer here. I really like Swoop Racer after my second pre-release. It was always a respectable unit on the ground area, especially on turn 3. The only downside of this one is I kept thinking it was a vehicle. It looks like it's a vehicle. I wanted it to synergize with the Frontier ATRT, but yeah, it's not a vehicle. So just keep that in mind as you're playing. Swoop Racer is not a vehicle. Another card that really performed well for me was 7th Fleet Defender. So 3-cost space unit, 3/2, comes in with a shield. Just really good stats and effect for its cost. And it's also an Imperial, which synergizes with Tarkin, which, speaking of Tarkin, I didn't learn my lesson from my first pre-release, and I played Tarkin despite not having a ton of Imperials in the deck. But unlike Leia, I do like Tarkin because he can stack those experience tokens on a single Imperial unit, so you don't necessarily need a ton of Imperials, I came to find. You just have 1 or 2, or even just 1 other Imperial unit on the board. You can keep using that extra resource you might have each turn and just loading up experience counters on a single Imperial unit. Another play that was really nice, I did have 1 Snow Trooper Lieutenant, and there was a nice little combo between the Snow Trooper Lieutenant and Grand Moff Tarkin when he is in his unit side. So you can deploy the Snow Trooper Lieutenant, attack with Grand Moff Tarkin, and then give an experience token to the Snow Trooper Lieutenant or just to another Imperial unit on the board. So it was a nice little sequence of events that felt really good to execute when you're playing. Also, Tarkin's only 2 power, so giving an extra 2 power with the Snow Trooper Lieutenant makes Tarkin an even more respectable threat out on the board. So that is the deck. And that's really a wrap on my pre-releases. Let me know how your pre-release went, your thoughts on the sealed format, what cards and strategies performed well for you. Did you pull any sweet cards, any showcases? Let me know. The Spark of Rebellion release is finally here, so you can expect to see me opening packs and building more sealed decks for Star Wars Unlimited very soon. I'll see you then.